Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. We are in a new month, which means that it's time for another ranking video. Today we're going to go ahead and wrap up all of my August palettes. So all of the palettes that I reached for in August, I'm going to talk you through and let you know how many times I used all of them. I always love doing these because it shows me what palettes I'm reaching for, and I just think it's nice to round them up and put them all next to me because I can see now exactly how many palettes I reached for and how many I didn't touch in the past month. But yeah, I have quite a few palettes to talk about today. I have 13 palettes, which you know is quite a high amount, but yeah, I have definitely used these ones in different capacity, and I will talk you through all of that in a second. But yeah, I'm excited to jump into the ranking. But before I do so, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. Alright, so like I said, I have used these palettes in very different capacity. Some of these, quite a few of these, I actually only reached for once. So I'm going to talk you through those. I think there is 6 palettes that I've only reached for once. So again, quite a few. And that is mostly because I did a palette bingo with all of my untouched palettes. So that is obviously palettes that I hadn't reached for yet this year, and I wanted to just use them and make a look with it. And I did post that back in August. So because I did that kind of palette bingo, I did reach for a lot of these palettes once. So like I said, I'm going to go through those first. First up we have the Snow Dream palette, which is a beautiful palette from Owners. This is one of the Christmas releases from last year. I did reach for one shade in here called Good Yule down here, and yeah, I reached for that one in that palette bingo. So this one comes in place number 13. The next palette in that palette bingo was my Wilderness palette, which from Beauty Bay, and I ended up reaching for the shade up here called Ocean. So that one was also in the look, so that is one used right there. I also pulled out my Charlotte Tilbury quad. This is the Exaggerize Bigger Brighter Eyes Filter quad, and I ended up rolling in the shade Define, which is the shade right here. So that is the shade I used in that look. Then the last from that look that I have to share with you right now is my Sultry palette. This one is from Anastasia, and I ended up rolling in the shade Slate, which is this grey shade right there. So I used that shade in the look, but of course the rest of the palette I haven't used because I only have the one use. However, I do have 2 more palettes coming in with one use. First up we have my Red Dragon palette, and I have used my shade Jade right here once, which is in my panels eyeshadows. So yeah, not too much use on this one. Obviously used the one. I need to remember to reach for this one more now in the next couple of days before my panels eyeshadows update, because I've been slacking with the shade a little bit. And then lastly, for one use, we have my Amrezy palette, and this one was in my Big Fat Eyeshadow project last month, so like in July I mean. And I reached for one shade in here, so I reckon I reached for the shade Bar for my Expandos pants the one time, but I might have reached for something else, but I think that's the shade I reached for. But anyway, I reached for only one shade in August, but I did reach for this one a lot in July. Alright, so we have finally passed the one uses, and we're going to move on to palette number 7 next. So in 7th spot we have my Metropolis palette from Natasha Denona. This is a palette where I had a shade in my panels eyeshadows in the past like month or so, and that is this shade right here called Queen, and I was able to pan on it, as you can see, which is really exciting. It's my second pan in this palette, and I did reach for that specific shade 6 times in the month of August to reach that goal. I did reach for it a couple of times in July too. I believe it took me like 11 uses to pan out in total, but yeah, 6 out of those uses came in the month of August, and the rest of the palette, by the way, I have not used yet this year. In spot number 6 we have a Colourpop palette. This one is the Through My Eyes palette, which was another one of my Big Fat Eyeshadow project palettes back in July, but I believe I'd created one of the looks in August, like in the beginning of August, just before my update, which is why it's in here. So yeah, I did do one look. I can't remember exactly what shades I reached for in that look, but again, I have 6 uses on it, so I believe I must have reached for 6 shades in that look. Sorry, I said 6, but it's 7, so 7 uses. Maybe that was like one look, then maybe one of the Expandos pan shades. I believe I had this orange in Expandos pants, maybe I reached for that one as well. But yeah, I of course reached for 7 shades in this month. Sorry, I kept saying 6, but it's 7. It's just because this one comes in 6th place, I mixed up the numbers. Alright, so we are getting up in the double digits, and in place number 5, we have my Pat McGrath Utopian Dreams palette, which is in my Big Fat Eyeshadow project for this month, and this one of course I have made 3 looks with, and 2 of those only actually fell in the month of August, and then the last look I have fell into September, so that's going to go into next month's numbers. But I have used this one 10 times, so those 2 looks ended up equaling to like 10 uses or 10 shades. So yeah, I'm really happy that I managed to reach this one. This is one of my favorite palettes. I absolutely love it. It actually was the palette that won my ultimate palette battle. So yeah, it's a beautiful palette. I'm happy that I got some use out of it. So this one comes in again in place number 5. In place number 4, we have another higher end palette, and this is my Natasha Denona bronze palette, which is also in my Big Fat Eyeshadow project. And this one looks like this. It's a beautiful warm tone palette, and I have made all 3 looks with this one in the month of August. Which equals out to 18 uses. I have reached for every single shade in here, and then I know which shades I have reached for 3 of them twice, but I'm not going to talk about that in this video. I'm going to talk you through exactly what I used in this palette in my Big Fat Eyeshadow project update, which should be up, I believe that's going to be my next video going up on Friday. Alright, so we come to my top 3 palettes. The next palette is the last of my Big Fat Eyeshadow project palettes that I talked about in this video, and that is the Cup Nebula palette. This one is from Kaleidos, and it's a beautiful color story. I really do enjoy this one. I have reached for this palette 19 times with those 3 looks. I also have the shade Celestial as an Expandos pans, and I haven't reached for it to 5 uses yet, but I think I reached for that one twice or 3 times, so a couple uses there. But overall, those uses were from those 3 looks, and I made some really beautiful looks with those palettes. So again, if you want to see those, you can check out my next video where I will talk you through all the details. And for my top 2 palettes, it's probably going to come as no surprise to anyone, but we have these 2 palettes right here. We have my Love Nose palette, which is my Product Level Up palette, and then my Soft Glam, which is my Panda palette. The question is just which one is going to end up on top. Last month, my Love Nose palette beat out my Panda palette, but this month that is not the case. The Love Nose palette comes in 2nd place with 29 uses in the month of August. I'm not going to show you what this one looks like on the inside. I'm not going to do that with this palette either, because I can do it with my Panda palette because I just updated that. But with this one, I'm not going to do it because my Product Level Up update is coming up somewhat soon. I believe it's Sunday or beginning of next week. So I'm not going to show you what this one looks like right now, but I have 29 uses on it in the month of August. So this one again comes in 2nd place. Then of course I've already spoiled it, but my Soft Glam palette comes in place number 1. And if you haven't checked out my Panda palette update, check out that first before I show you this, because I don't want to have any spoilers. But this is what the palette looks like. It's very well loved, as you can see. And in the month of August, I reached for this one 56 times. It's not my highest numbers with this palette by any means, but I'm excited that this one ended up being my most used palette again, because of course as I'm trying to finish it, I do want this one to end up being like my most used palette. With these shades, I did mention that I'm going to franken this palette. I'm actually going to film that right after this video, just to get it out of the way. It's only been a couple of days since I filmed my update, and I have done 1 look with this palette since then, but I want to franken it as soon as I can, just to have the comparison pictures before I start using the palette more. But yeah, this one comes in again in place number 1, and of course I'm foreseeing that to be the case moving forward. I did mention in my last Panda palette update that I have been slacking on this palette a little bit, so I'm really going to make an effort to try to reach for this one more and reach for more shades. So yeah, hopefully the numbers will be even better than 53 next month. But there you guys, there you have it. That is my palette ranking for the month of August. Again, like I said, there was very kind of split between the palettes I used. Some of them, like a lot of them, I only reached for once, so I did reach for a lot of palettes, but a lot of them didn't have very high uses. So you know, it's a bit of like a toss-up, I guess, in that. Do I prefer to reach for more palettes, or do I prefer to get more use out of the palettes that I reach for? But I feel like this month I did a good balance, because I did reach for a lot of palettes, but some of them I reached for only once, and then the other palettes I did get some decent use out of. But I'm gonna wrap up the video here. I hope you guys are having an amazing day. Let me know what your most used palette was for August if you do track it. And otherwise, I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you are, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys.